This summer I went on an Interrail trip for the first time in my life, and it turned out to be a pretty cheap way to travel. These are my top tips for how to save money while traveling on Interrail or Eurail. To start with, let me show you the full cost of my trip. I traveled from Stockholm to Hamburg and then to Vienna, Bled and onwards to Venice. After that I moved on to San Marino, Florence, Pisa, Pompeii, Capri and Rome. This was a 3-week solo trip and the total cost was approximately 4,000 American dollars or euros. The euro and the dollar are basically the same rate right now, but I'm gonna keep using euros in this video. I did all the touristy activities that I wanted, I ate and drank quite well, and I had decent hotels on the entire trip. You can make a trip like this much cheaper, but you can make it much more expensive as well. This was basically a mid-range type of trip. The two most expensive budget items for me were hotels and general living expenses. Both of these were roughly 1,200 euros each. The cost for all the train travel was a bit more than 500 euros, and all the activities came to basically the same amount. The rest of my travel budget was spent on other types of transportation, like boats and buses and a taxi or two, at 450 euros in total. And on laundry. 62 euros were spent on laundry during these 3 weeks. That should give you a rough idea of what a complete Interrail trip might cost, but let's dive into some more practical tips. First of all, when buying an Interrail or Eurail pass, think about what type of pass you actually need. For example, you're probably gonna spend at least a few days in every city, so you might be fine with 10 travel days instead of 15, and that would save you 100 euros. Also, are you planning on traveling through many countries or just one country, for example Italy? If so, you might find a cheaper pass for just that country. Secondly, do you want to travel first class or second class? In my view, the first class extras just aren't worth it. Go for second class. It's still a comfortable ride and you're gonna save hundreds of euros that way. If you want to spend money on something extra, I recommend reserving a seat in advance instead. Last-minute trips without a reservation, especially during summer, is often a bad idea. In fact, in many countries you're gonna have a hard time traveling at all without a reservation. In Italy and France, for example, you must have a seat reservation on all high-speed trains. But even in Germany, you might want to reserve a seat. The trains are often extremely packed, and since the Germans have a fetish for following the rules, they will be very upset if you're taking up a spot that's reserved for baggage. When you book a seat, don't use the Interrail app though. That one costs several euros extra for every reservation. Go to each country's train company website instead. I had trouble reserving seats for Italy, but I found that I could go to the OBB website for Austria instead. Just a hint in case you run into the same issue. Every euro counts, so just make sure you don't use the app. Accommodation was my biggest cost for the whole trip. I picked hotels ranging from 2 stars to 4 stars, close to the central station in every city. If you want to save some money on hotels, make sure that you don't stick to just one booking page. If you normally use hotels.com or Expedia, don't just search there. Try booking.com as well, or just Google for hotels in the area. The prices can differ a lot, and you can find hotels that are only available on certain booking sites. That said, I personally try to use hotels.com a lot, cause you can collect bonus nights there. You get a big discount on every 10th hotel stay. They call it a bonus night, but it's not free. It's a discount that's worth the average cost of those 10 previous nights. If you find a hotel that's 10 or 20 euros cheaper elsewhere, then it's not worth sticking to hotels.com, but if it's the same price, why not? If your schedule is more flexible, I highly recommend that you don't pre-book though. Walk around the city and simply see what the walk-in rate is. You can often find extremely cheap places to stay that way. And that way you can inspect the hotel beforehand, so you're not surprised by mold and mildew in the corners, if you're not into that. When it comes to living expenses, there are some obvious things you can do to save money when traveling. Most importantly, don't go to restaurants close to big tourist attractions. Sure, it's tempting to grab something to eat just after you've looked at an amazing piece of architecture, but don't. Just a couple of blocks away, you'll always find cheaper options. Also, when comparing prices, don't use your home country as a reference. Compare against other prices you've seen when walking around. For example, I was staying at a hotel in Egypt and they wanted $15 for a dinner. Compared to Sweden, $15 is perfectly fine, but in Egypt, that's highway robbery. If you see completely unacceptable prices like that, just go somewhere else. If you're gonna be traveling for several weeks, you will likely need to wash your clothes at some point. Or at least I hope you were planning on doing so. A small tip for saving money is to never do laundry at the hotels. Ask around for local laundry services instead. In most places, you can find either self-serve laundrettes or laundry shops where you can drop off a bag of clothes and pick them up in the evening, freshly washed and folded. You could also wash your clothes in the hotel sink, but I wouldn't do that. I don't trust my hand washing skills. For my final cost-saving tip, consider what type of local transportation you need in every city. Your first impulse might be to take a taxi, but do you really need to? Is there a bus or a metro you can take instead? Or can you get a day pass on an electric scooter instead? Or can you walk instead? You have a map and a GPS in your phone, so if it's just a kilometer or two, it's definitely within walking distance. That way you can also see more along the way and you get to know the city better. Some cities are extremely walkable. In Florence, for example, I would say that you can skip all public transport and just walk everywhere instead. And if you're visiting Venice, half of the charm is to explore all the narrow alleys and get lost along the way. So don't be afraid to go cheap on local transportation and rely on your feet instead. And there you have it. Those were my top tips for how to save money while traveling on Interrail or Eurail. I hope you found it useful, or at least a bit interesting. Like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day.